The Cats are coming quick, so let's break it down with Kevin McGuffey. Last word on college football, Kentucky football, as they try to amend a 7-6 campaign, which is now established as a disappointment for Kentucky fans.
And that's right. Who would have thought? Who would have thought in all the years you and I have been talking that 7-6 and making it to a bowl game would be considered a disappointment? But here we are, as heading into Mark Stoops' 11th season at Kentucky, and that's the old Kentucky, as they like to say. So onward and yonward, or onward and upward, whatever phrase you want to use, as we head into 2023. And quite honestly, expectations are way up there as we head into this into the opener against Ball State here shortly.
And the fans must be hopeful because they are grabbing up tickets like almost never before.
Right. Yeah, they just announced over the weekend that the allotment of season tickets are officially sold out. It's 40,200 season tickets have been purchased, and another 6,500 student season passes are all sold out. Now there are some limited tickets to some limited tickets to single games and like little combo passes, but for all intents and purposes, all the season tickets are sold out, and this is the most recorded during Stoops' 11 years here at the helm of Kentucky. Including 2015 when they rebuilt, redid Commonwealth Stadium. It's still Commonwealth Stadium to me. I know it's officially Kroger Field, and which supposedly there's like little Kroger symbols, and I don't know if it's true or not. Like maybe little shopping carts or something. Somebody, I don't know. You know how people like to do Photoshop on the internet. But anyway, getting off track there. But yes, season tickets sold out for the first time in Stoops' tenure here at Kentucky. So as I say, the excitement is there, and folks are ready to get this season going. I know that's for sure.
Yeah, the defense was pretty solid here in 2022. 12th in the nation in total defense, only gave up 311 yards per game and under 20 points per game, which is a really good number in today's college football. Deone Walker, of course, was a guy that flashed as a freshman, showed a lot of promise there. And the top two tacklers come back, De'Eric Jackson and Jordan Leavitt.
Right. Yeah. I said talk about Walker. Well, first just talk about the defense in general. Brad White, what Brad White has done with this group in the last few years of being here. I still think, as Kentucky fans, I hate to say this, but you should, enjoy the time while he's here. I could totally see him, like a John Sumrall, maybe within another year or two, starting, his head coaching career. But as you said, the defense, like 12th in the nation last year, held Georgia to 16 points in that game at Kroger Field last year. If only Kentucky could have gotten some offense, maybe they could have snapped that streak and had beaten the Bulldogs, and who knows what would have happened. But of course, held them to 16 points. We know what Georgia did when we got to the playoffs. But yes, when you start with the defense, you start up front, and Deone Walker is the guy to talk about. 6'6", 340 pounds. Came on, as you said, as a freshman last year. Had 40 tackles, a sack, and 2 pass deflections. And he starts this year on the watch list for both the Nagurski Award and the Outland Trophy. And for him to only be a sophomore and be on those lists is pretty, I think it's pretty impressive. And Coach Stoops had interesting story from practice on Saturday. He for Stoops, he was actually in a pretty good mood. Normally after scrimmages and everything in practices, he has that whole coach, we got this to work on, got blah, blah, blah. But he was actually in a pretty good mood on Saturday when they finished practice. But he jokingly said he had to throw Walker out of the game because the offense couldn't get anything accomplished, because he was being too disruptive in the backfield. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what Kentucky fans are hoping for this year. And he was the second team All-SEC in the AP, and one of 3 true freshmen to make that team last year. So it starts with him, and big things are expected from him. And I think he's going to have just an outstanding season. And I said we'll see where it goes. And then along with him, Octavius Oxendine, also up there on the defensive line. He's been a multi-year player for the Cats. Last year he lost some weight to try to get quicker, but they didn't think that worked well for him. That maybe he got a little too light and got kind of not run over, but was easier. Didn't have as good a year as stopping, clogging up the middle. So he's put that weight back on, bulked back up, and is ready for another what we hope is going to be a big season here in 2023.
We've got Kevin McGuffey here from Last Word on College Football. Check out Kevin's work right there on the Cats in particular, and the upcoming edition at some point of bowl projections for 2023. That's always a good thing.
Right. Yeah, I did the one back in late May and early June, and so if all the stars align and everything works out, I'm going to try to start with week 0 after this first week of college basketball. Sorry, Kentucky Freudian slip, college football, and try to do projections every week leading up to when they announce the pairings in December. So I was able to do it last year. It's something. It's a lot of fun. I have fun doing it now. Whether my percentage may not be as good as some people, but I think I hold my own pretty well. So.
All right, we'll be looking out for those. That's fun stuff right there. Anything else on the defense, secondary or otherwise?
Another guy I really want to talk about is J.J. Weaver, who plays that edge position. It's kind of the hybrid linebacker, defensive end position. He's played 35 games, 16 starts so far in his career. Actually went through the senior day. He had 47 tackles last year, 6 for a loss, had 3 fumble recoveries. He actually went through the senior day festivities last year with the thoughts of going ahead and putting in for the draft, but decided to come back for another year. And the Big Blue Nation has got to be nothing but excited about that. Of course, you can't talk about Weaver. Everybody knows it, I think, but if not, as a reminder, he does have 6 fingers on one of his hands. So he, whenever you see, ESPN, CBS, somebody, who doesn't always cover UK, that's always the first thing they talk about. But at that edge position, they think he can have an outstanding year. He just needs to stay healthy. He's missed parts of every season that he's been at Kentucky due to injury or injuries basically. So keeping him healthy is going to be key. But I really like Kentucky's linebackers. Just kind of segueing into that, I know they lost DeAndre Square, they lost Jaquez Jones, Jordan Wright. They've got De'Aaron Jackson and Trevin Wallace, 2 guys that I think we talked about. Like I said, Jackson was Kentucky's leading tackler last year with 67. Wallace had 54. He had a couple of interceptions. Those are 2 guys that I think the Cats, the defensive personnel, are really looking for them to take that next step forward here in 2023. And if that happens, like I said, I think Kentucky's defense is going to be right there again. Last year, as you and I have talked about, the problem with Kentucky last year wasn't on the defensive side of the ball. It was an offensive scheme that just, quite frankly, didn't work, and the offensive line. We talked about that last time. They've made great strides in trying to fortify the Big Blue Wall for 2023. But like I said, I think this defense is going to be fun to watch this year.
All right, Kentucky, hopeful for big things here in 2023. Of course, the big monster Georgia's in the way in the SEC Eastern Division, but should have some interesting matchups with some pretty comparable teams in Tennessee, South Carolina, and we'll see what we get out of Florida and Billy Napier. They've got a brutal schedule, and a lot of people are forecasting a lot of losses for Florida, but they're still going to be tough to deal with on game day.
Right. Yeah, the whole thing with Kentucky and Florida, the narrative has kind of flipped in that series where Kentucky lost 31 in a row, and now Kentucky's won, 2 in a row for the first time since the 70s. And honestly, should be favored again this year. I think it's Kentucky wins again this year to be the first time since the 1950s that they've beaten Florida 3 in a row. And just as an overall schedule, I think Kentucky needs to start 5-0 to have a good season, because of the season that UK fans are hoping for. Because the end of the schedule is pretty. The end of the season is pretty brutal. You got Tennessee, Mississippi State, South Carolina, and Alabama all in there, and then the game against Louisville, which all of a sudden, even though Kentucky's dominated that series the last few years, now that Jeff Brom's there, all of a sudden everyone in up I-64 here thinks that it's going to be the Cardinals are going to take the series back over. But we'll see what happens when we get to the end of the season. But yes, Kentucky, they need to start. If they start 5-0, I think 8-4 is definite possibility. Maybe even 9-3. My original bowl projections, I had them going to the former Outback Bowl, had them playing Minnesota. So, which ironically was the exact same matchup I had scheduled, had them last year in a different bowl game. Actually, I had them in the Music City Bowl, but then we've talked about it. That would have been a whole lot better matchup than the Iowa game. But anyway,
if Minnesota's not available, I'm sure that Iowa could fill in. They might be available.
No, let's hope. Let's hope it's at least another decade before. The first year was fun because you had the whole Stoops. Stoops playing against his alma mater. And people had always, and I had done it as well. I tried to match up Kentucky and Iowa in a bowl game somewhere, and not saying it was fun because Kentucky won that Citrus Bowl, but that was really exciting. Like I said, last year's was not as good because you had Will Levis who didn't play, Chris Rodriguez didn't play, and then Iowa's defense just dominated, But yeah, I think it gets off 5-0. I think they can beat South Carolina, even though it's down there. I think they can beat South Carolina, Tennessee. Kentucky's had their chances, hasn't gone their way the last couple of years, or generally for the last 30 years, with a few exceptions. But I think Alabama and Georgia are still, there's a lot of excitement. I tell you what, there's a lot of excitement about that Alabama game, and not just from the Kentucky side. I've seen posts, online from Alabama fans, trying to get tickets, trying to find a way to get up here to that game because they think it's going to be pretty exciting, and I think it will be too. So, like I said, they start 5-0. I think Kentucky's in great shape for a really good bowl game come December or hopefully January. So.
Vanderbilt is the SEC opener if they, in fact, have a stadium to play in. The overall opener, of course, is on September 3rd, that Saturday, or September 2nd, that Saturday against Ball State, in what's become a pretty long list and series of Kentucky taking on the MAC in non-conference games.
Yes, Kentucky loves their MACtion, definitely. So they've got that one this year. Like I said, then they have Eastern Kentucky in there. Which honestly is not going to be that easy of a game. Eastern has played Kentucky really, really well. For those that don't know, Eastern is in Richmond, which is about 25 miles south of Lexington. The last 2 times they've played, Kentucky's won, but Eastern has had the lead in the second half, even in the fourth quarter. One game a few years ago went into overtime. But, I think Kentucky's going to win that one. But I was talking about the first 5 games. You got Ball State, you got Eastern Kentucky, then Akron. There's another MAC school. Then they go to Vanderbilt, and then they have Florida at home. And then that sixth game is Georgia. So a little different change on the schedule. Usually Georgia has been later in the year. South Carolina has been early in the year. Those are flip-flopped this year, where South Carolina is actually the last conference game, and Georgia is much earlier this year. So that's why I was saying, like the 5-0, 5-0 going into Georgia, and I think we're Kentucky's in pretty good shape. And then after that, the next 2 weeks, you got Missouri after that. So I think Kentucky can win that one. So you're looking at 6-1. Then you got a bye week. Then you start that really brutal last part of the season with Tennessee. So
we have an SEC predictions live stream coming up here later this week on the Voice of College Football. And yes, for a second consecutive year, Kentucky's got 2 games against the MAC, and the 2 games last year weren't necessarily a joke. They beat Miami by 24, but I think they were down, or it was extremely close in the second half. And then they only beat Northern Illinois by 1 score.
Yeah, the Northern Illinois game, the Kentucky, well, like I said, we've talked about it. The whole offense thing just wasn't clicking. Northern Illinois had a really good chance to win that game, honestly, and Kentucky, I think, was kind of fortunate to pull out the W that game. But yeah, like I said, that's that's we've talked about it. That's kind of the schedule that Kentucky has played. Doing they want to get those, try to get those guaranteed 3 wins. Usually it's 2 games against the MAC, and then either an FCS school or another, another school that they can beat, and then they've dominated against Louisville the last 4 years. So you're starting with 4 wins before you even hit the SEC. So in the old days it was like, okay, we just got to win 2 more and we're bowl eligible. but as you said in the open, we're past that point now. Where just getting bowl eligible is not what we're looking for. So
we've got tons of SEC content on our new SEC channel. So grab the link in the description section. Follow us on over to our new SEC channel if you are not watching this content on the new SEC channel. Otherwise, you're right here, and please subscribe. And head on over to Last Word on College Football. Check out Kevin's work and everybody else at Last Word to get yourself prepped for 2023. Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark, for having me on again, as always. I really appreciate it. And always great to come on and talk some Kentucky football. It's hard to believe that the season is basically here now. It just seems like yesterday almost that we were just wrapping up 2022 with, Georgia, I think, just scored 2 more touchdowns while we were talking. Oh, sorry. But anyway.